Hi, my name is Jeffrey Nicholas. I'm an associate professor at Providence College. This is a lecture on Chapter 2 of Max Horkheimer's Eclipse of Reason. There's a lot to cover in this chapter, so I'm going to speak quickly. Feel free to pause or to go back and rewatch the video if I go too quick for you. What this chapter is about is what Horkheimer calls the two panaceas that are offered for the anxiety and the stress and the low quality of life that human beings live in the contemporary world. So his thesis is that two philosophies today, positivism and its neo-positivist form, and neo-Thomism, serve as panaceas and not real alternatives to the domination of subjective rationality. So if you recall from chapter 1, Horkheimer lays out the parts of subjective rationality, its instrumentality, and its formalization, and links domination today to the prevalence of subjective rationality in our world. He also says that there is a problem with objective reason, and we'll talk a little bit about objective reason towards the end of this lecture. But the real focus is subjective rationality because of its domination today, and it's linked to the domination of human beings. And so what is offered to us to overcome our domination are positivism and neo-Thomism, and both of these are panaceas. That is, they're offered as things that will solve our crises, but in fact, they'll never be able to solve our crises. So I'm going to go through positivism and neo-positivism first, and then spend a little bit of time on neo-Thomism. So when we talk about positivism, we have to think about Horkheimer writing in the 1940s and the domination of this particular kind of philosophy under this name, also under the name of empiricism, in the early 20th century of philosophy. The core idea here of positivism is the attempt to understand meaningful language and to provide a means for judging when something is reasonable or when it's not reasonable. And so they boil this down into this first statement here. Any meaningful statement is verifiable, and unverifiable statements are not meaningful. So the idea here, the positivist point here, is that if a statement, the house is yellow, is verifiable, then it is a meaningful statement. If the statement is not verifiable, abortion is bad, then it is an unverifiable statement. It's not meaningful. It doesn't really say anything to us. So the idea here is that all knowledge can be expressed through logic and mathematics or derives from natural science. So what this did to social science in the early 20th century was turn it into an attempt to mimic mathematics and to mimic natural sciences. And also these philosophers are saying that philosophy itself should model itself on the hard natural sciences, particularly on physics. So a very different way of thinking about philosophy that tries to put everything in terms of science, that is the natural science that we've had since Newton. Now Horkheimer begins with a critique here, and he says that what the positivists forget or try to excuse is the destructiveness that science and technology has brought about. So in the upper picture there, we see the destruction after the dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki. And obviously science and technology can lead to these destructive methods. And the positivists at the time said, well, this isn't the result of science, this is the result of the misuse of science. But we see today, even still, this sort of misuse of science. So in the bottom picture, we see cows standing in their own feces on a mass farm where they're being raised for beef. And we know this is one of the reasons that we have such an outbreak of dangerous E. coli that can kill people. So here we have science and technology coming together to destroy various aspects of our life. So science by itself, Horkheimer says, cannot be the answer. He goes on to say that science is an auxiliary means of production. So what he means here is that today when we think about science, and at least from the 1850s, science has been part of the productive process. So this is coming out of Horkheimer's uh, arguments from Marxism and a critique of capitalism. And what Horkheimer wants to say is that capitalism is part of the problem. Science is part of the problem because they're founded in what we're going to talk about in chapter 3, the domination of nature. Of course, producing the goods of life is important, and we need things. So one of the things that we need today are cars, and we see that this assembly line process operated by robots. Here we have a means of production. Science is being used for that. We see the same thing in the other picture with cattle being slaughtered and hanging up. And here again, we have this sort of assembly line means of production. And the idea that Horkheimer is trying to produce, or I'm sorry, the idea that Horkheimer is trying to say is that a science becomes not only part of the means of production, but it's controlled and it takes the form of a means of production. And so what we see, particularly today in universities and colleges in the United States, is that scientists have to seek outside funding, usually through military contacts or through corporate contacts, to fund the research that they want to do. And so now the object is not to produce knowledge for the sake of humankind or knowledge for itself, but knowledge for the means of production. And for Horkheimer, this is part of the process of domination. We no longer serve human ends, we serve the ends of corporations and the ends of capitalism. So there's an economic technocracy here today. And Horkheimer is trying to argue that no matter what society that we live in, if we want to understand science, we have to understand how it functions and how it relates to the functioning of society. And so today, thought itself becomes the very act of functioning as ancilla administrationis, that means as a part of the administration of society. And we see this with the Milgram experiments. We see this with the way that the Nazis used genetics to weed out members of their population. We see it in the 40s and 50s in the United States when experiments were done on black prisoners and on poor women. And so we continue to see the use of science as part of the administration of society. And so the growth in, say, the technology of running an institution like a university becomes part of that administrative society. And that, for Horkheimer, is the key to understanding domination today, that we live administered lives that we have little control over. So if we return to the idea about truth and about science, we look into the universities today and we see that the sciences and humanities are divided for producing more things. And today, 50, 60 years after Horkheimer, we see that this division of humanities from the sciences and from business in the universities has become a part of the production process as we continue to cut funding for humanities programs and we increase funding for business programs, and we tell the sciences to fund themselves through cooperating with either the military industrial complex or with corporations themselves. So science is objective only in the sense that it's emptied of any content that helps human beings. It's only aimed at the destruction of life. And this can be true about many different things that we can talk about, and we could get into some detail, for example, about IVF or other sorts of things. But the idea here is that not that there are individual things that don't break away from that, but that the way that we to do science aims to satisfy not human ends, but the ends of production. And we can see that just in the way that something like IVF is costly and is not available to the very poor. Humanities, however, suffer from this as well because they don't serve human content. They only serve ideology. And so we see how study of history or study of philosophy can become ideological in the sense that it only serves to conform to reality. So for Horkheimer, empiricism is not a principle of truth, but it becomes a mode of behavior. And that's the way that we live our lives today. We pick up these sorts of pieces from humanities and we say, oh, we learned this so that we can have interesting conversations at dinner parties with our corporate friends. And so the idea there is that the humanities themselves serve as a means of production. This gets us into this idea of fact, which is so dominant in our world today. We're interested in what the facts are. And we're not interested in people's opinions, or we're not interested in philosophy. We're only interested in facts. But for Horkheimer, the fact today, a fact is a reification. That means it's something that cannot be questioned. If we say that the room is 20 by 20 and it seats this many people, then that's a fact that cannot be questioned. And so if we wanted to change the configuration of the room so that it seats less people, so that we can have more individual interaction, that doesn't fit with the facts that are given. So fact is a product of social alienation. In it, the abstract object of exchange is conceivable as a model for all objects of experience in the given category. That means that anytime that we think about facts, we have to think about how they are alienated from our everyday lives and how they are used abstractly to sort of model what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to perceive the world. And rather what Horkheimer is saying is that we need to break through these facts and look at the underlying reality so that we can question them. So for Horkheimer, it's always going to come back to how can we question the system, and how do these things that are part of the system prevent us from questioning them, so that we become more like the people in the Milgram experiment who continue to shock people even to the point of death because an authority figure says so. So he relates this to the way that we think about cognition today. And Horkheimer says that by identifying the cognitive structure of science, intelligence functions to necessarily to organize the material in a pattern acceptable to the commercial culture. So if you think about how you look at things in the world today and how you understand how things fit into the world today, you might see a pattern similar to what you see in Nick Naylor in the movie Thank You for Smoking. And that is, we just organize things and how they fit into our worldview, and we don't tend to question them. So how does this fit into a world in which I can, say, pay the mortgage, Nick Naylor's famous line? How does this fit into the world so that I can continue to act the way I do without consequences for who I am? There's a popular saying these days, it is what it is. And this goes into what Horkheimer is talking about in terms of not questioning reality. And it's interesting because Horkheimer uses this phrase. He says, as long as society is what it is, it seems more helpful and honest to face the antagonism between theory and practice than to obscure it by the concept of an organized intelligence at work. And so the idea here is that society should have an antagonism between theory and practice, so that theory is always questioning how we're doing things rather than accepting how we do things as the way it should be, or as the way that it is, and so it's beyond question. And so Horkheimer's point in this whole discussion of neo-positivism is that if we accept positivism for what it is, that is, the only meaningful statement is verifiable, then we're already accepting society for what it is, because society is verifiable. We watch it and we see it, and justice works the way it is, and it cannot be changed. This is important, for example, in recent discussions of the Parkland shooting in Florida. And we see students coming out and challenging society as it is, and politicians continue to say, this is what it is. I hear so many people say, hey, the Second Amendment is what it is, and that's what we have to abide by. And there's no questioning about not only the value of the Second Amendment, but how we apply the Second Amendment. And so you don't have to be against gun ownership, and you don't have to be against using guns or people owning guns in order for you to question how society organizes itself so that guns are so available for mass shootings. I obviously haven't gotten to neo-Thomism, so I will make a second lecture about that. But the main point of this section of the lecture is to think about how science is used today to continue the process of commercialization, continue our refusal to ask questions about society, and rather just to accept society for what it is. Thank you.